Earlier today, ANC Chief Whip in Parliament withdrew the National Assembly motion to re-establish the donation limit and reporting threshold. It stands over at least until next week, likely Thursday. This was to allow for further consultation. According to the Office of the Chief Whip, Professor of Political Studies at the University of Johannesburg, Stephen Friedman, joins us to discuss the often murky relationship between politics and money. Professor Friedman has written previously about why changes in South African law won't end the toxic mix of money and politics. And do you still maintain that position, Prof?
Oh, yeah, more than ever, Vuyo. I think this legislation is potentially very damaging because if it goes through, then the president can decide that rich people can give as much money as they like to political parties, and we will never know about it. Of course, right now, and that's why Parliament has to deal with it, as I speak to you now, there are no limits on what people can give without telling us about them, because the old law is gone and the new law hasn't provided for that yet. So we're in a position now where anybody who wants to buy the favor of a political party can do it, and we will never know about it.
Of course, I mean, the politicians, especially those who are benefiting handsomely and who are keen on this to continue the way things are or have been, are defending this person, saying, well, look at some of the people who are giving money to the ANC, but also to, the DA, which they argue then kills the argument, because here you have people who are giving money to people who are supposedly at opposite ends of the political spectrum.
Yeah, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't know about it. I think we are entitled to know about it, and we are entitled to ask them what they're trying to achieve by giving to both parties. But I think, to answer your question, it's very important to remind viewers of why we got to where we are at the moment. The reason this law has been amended is that when the law, up until a while ago, we didn't have any laws restricting what people could give before we had a right to know about it. When the law came in, which said that donations above a particular level had to be declared, above 100,000 rand, then parties, certainly the governing party, discovered that a lot of its donors didn't want to give to it anymore. Because they didn't want their identity revealed. Now, there's a great irony about this, because when the law was first proposed, the DA said, no, well, you can't do this because people won't give to opposition parties because they're worried about government reprisals. It was always a bad argument, because a government which is going to punish people for giving to opposition parties probably has secret police which can tell you who's donating to who and who isn't. But what actually happened was that a lot of people stopped giving to the governing party. Now, why would you stop giving to a governing party if there's disclosure? Well, obviously, because you don't want people to know that you're giving to the party, and that assumes that you're not giving to the party because you want to promote democracy. You're giving to the party because you expect favors in return. So what this is supposed to do is to provide cover to donors, so they can once again splash their cash, and you and I and the rest of the South African public will not know about it. And that can't be in the interests of us. It's in the interests of political parties, but it's not in the interests of the citizens.
Now, the governing party's chief whip's office says, this is going to stand over at least until next week to allow for further consultation. We haven't been told with who and to achieve what exactly. It's just your thoughts. What could they be possibly up to?
Well, we don't know what they're up to, and that's what's worrying. I mean, they might be worried about the fact that there has been a backlash against this from some of the parties, because another effect of what they've done is that the bigger parties will get more money from the taxpayer, and the smaller parties will get less money. So the smaller parties are unhappy about this, and they may be trying to prevent legal action from the smaller parties. That would be the most obvious explanation. But of course, the problem for us is that the longer they do this, the more we are in a position where there are just no limits. Because the whole purpose of introducing this measure, which they postponed until next week, was at least to ensure that there were some limits on what people could give without the public knowing about it. The longer they delay this resolution, we remain in the current situation where basically somebody can give as much as they like, and none of us will ever be any of the wiser.
But do you sense, or do you get a sense, certainly from the small parties, that this is a battle that they intend taking up?
I would think so, yes. I mean, there's nothing in my experience which worries political parties more than access to money. You sometimes think that they're more concerned about whether they're funded than whether people vote for them. But in any event, I mean, there is quite a lot of upset among the smaller parties, and it would seem quite an obvious thing to ask the courts to intervene on. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if this is something which lands up on the desk of the Constitutional Court sooner rather than later.
And I mean, organizations like your My Vote Counts, I mean, have been active in this space. And of course, what this new law that the president has signed, is undoing some of the very, deliberate but also hard-won victories that these NGOs, managed to. I mean, the victories that they managed to secure. Do you see them perhaps joining your smaller parties, assuming that the smaller parties do indeed have an appetite for taking this up?
Well, I think whether or not the small parties decide to take it up, and as I say, I think they probably will. I think you will find citizens' organizations, perhaps My Vote Counts would be an obvious candidate, but there are others as well who will take this to court. And appropriately so, because I think that the right to know is so fundamental to a democracy, and the damage which is caused by allowing money unchecked without any public scrutiny is so great that this is a matter which the Constitutional Court should decide on. So not only do I expect that, I think that we should welcome it if it happens, because if the Constitutional Court doesn't have a role in deciding whether we should know whether political parties are funded by rich people, then you're really limiting the role of the court quite severely. So they should take it to court, and I think they probably will.
Now, notwithstanding, of course, I mean, this suspicion or the view held by many that the Electoral Matters Amendment Bill is in fact nothing but, a desperate attempt by the governing party in particular to raid public coffers, given that they cannot secure, or they can't seem to secure monies or the amounts that they would like to have for elections. Is there no merit, though, in getting the fiscus to actually fund these things, to avoid the very issue you raised right at the beginning about, what potential funders may be up to, or what their agenda may be whenever they decide to fund political parties?
Absolutely. Look, I don't think that the governing party is doing this because it wants to raid public coffers. The governing party is doing this because it wants those people who don't want it known that they donate large sums to the governing party. They want them to be able to do that and for you and I not to know about it. But although, I think there is a certain amount of unfairness in the change to the public funding formula, we very badly need public funding for precisely the reasons you've outlined, is that the more this is an open and public process, the less room there is for rich people to buy influence. But I think that we really need to relook at the way in which public funding is redistributed, because the way in which public funding is distributed at the moment, already even before this change, it advantages the bigger parties unfairly because you get money based on your last election result. But if you've lost 10 or 20% support between then and now, you still get the funding that you would have got if you had those voters still with you. So I'm in favor of quite a serious overhaul in which public funding is matched to how many citizens you can get to support your party, rather than the current formula. But there's no doubt that we need public funding because, as you correctly say, the more public funding we have, the less room there is for private funding to make sure that what politicians do is what the funders want and not what the voters want.
Prof, let's leave it there for this afternoon. Thank you very much for your time.